Rated Gen Z, where real talks get real. Each episode dives deep into the minds of 18 to 24-year-olds, exploring their dreams, struggles, and perspectives that most people never hear. We're diving into the chaos that defines a generation everyone talks about, but nobody actually listens to. This isn't just a podcast. This is a generation speaking. Welcome to the podcast, Mitchell. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Small world, because I was just talking before you got on that I moved to Springfield, Virginia, where you were from, when I first moved to Virginia. So it's kind of interesting that I would know Springfield.
Yeah, no, that's so random. And the fact that, like I went to, high school where you lived. I mean, wow,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
yeah. And then, you can't see now, but I'm wearing my Virginia Tech sweatshirt because my son's an alumni. I can say that now. It's so weird to say that. Yeah. So, what year are you?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a junior at the Citadel, or like a third, second class cadet, as we say. So,
Okay. And I love that you're wearing your uniform.
yeah, we have to wear it at all times. In fact,
Really?
yeah, so we have to wear it within 10 miles of the school, or else we get in trouble.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have, how many uniforms do you have so that you can at least like not worry about having to wash it all the time?
Oh, so we only have like so this we have like a million because we wear this like pretty much every day. But
Okay.
for like league uniforms and parade uniforms, because we have like a million uniforms for that sort of thing, or like we have like the camo one you see the army wearing.
Yeah.
Um, we have a couple of those, so that like you can wear it for parade and then you can go wear it on leave or whatever, because it's all this hoopla because it is a military college. So.
Yes, but a very well respected one. I know I have some friends that graduated from there. And I mean, do you know what your future holds for you when you graduate? Because I did see that you are studying physics.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm not too sure yet. So I'm actually applying for this program with the Navy called NUPOC, and
Okay.
it's a really great deal. It's not like ROTC, so you basically are going to go be an officer in the Navy, except you don't have all the associated like burdens, like doing classes or doing military lab or like various like trips you have to do.
Okay.
It's pretty much like, hey, here's the freedom to study physics or do technical sciences, and then afterwards you go in the Navy and you get to be an officer for them. So it's a little more my speed, I think, especially being at the Citadel. It affords me more free time to do the activities I like. So, but after the Navy, my goal is to I really like physics and I really want to get my PhD in physics. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So I know I want to be in the Navy and I know I want to get my PhD in physics. So.
That's incredible. I love astrophysics. And I took astronomy my freshman year in college thinking, oh, I love astronomy. I love the universe. I'll do really well. And actually, it's the only class I've ever failed in college because of the math.
Yeah, the math is definitely what really trips people up there. I mean, that's
Yeah,
why I really like physics. I like the order of everything. I like how
yeah.
you can explain the world with math. Although I will admit, I actually don't like astrophysics. It's just I did some kind of like some research this semester in solar radio waves.
Uh-huh.
So like when like the sun, like they talk about like it bursting and emitting
Yes.
things, and then it's like gonna hit the earth and we're all gonna die.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of did, I mean, very like low level work in what we were looking for like radio signals. So because those travel really fast, so we can like predict it ahead of time. It's kind of
Yeah.
the thought process, and I did not enjoy it. But that's okay. You got to figure out what you don't like. You got to figure out what you like. So.
Yeah, so then tell me within physics, like what is it that you do like? Because I feel like physics can be really broad too.
Yeah, so in physics, I mean, they say there's like big three. The big three, there's theoretical, there's experimental, and then there's computational.
Okay.
And computational is a much smaller branch, but that's actually the one I really enjoy. So I really enjoy like modeling and doing data analytics for various systems. And right now, I'm actually doing research on hurricanes. So hurricanes or tropical cyclones, as like I guess the technical term,
Yeah.
when they form and they're spinning there's actually more like clouds that can come around it. And physics, we talk about like angular momentum being conserved.
Okay.
Basically, just when you spin, things want to kind of like pull inwards.
Yeah.
And when this thing is spinning, the clouds kind of come inwards and it like chokes out the inner cloud. And so you actually have two rings. We call it like a secondary
Yeah.
hurricane or a secondary eye wall. And sorry, I'm not explaining it that
No,
well, but
it almost reminds me of like a black hole in a sense, but keep going.
and so when it spins inside, it chokes out the inner one and it becomes a stronger, more powerful hurricane. And we call that cycle from inner to the outer going back to the inner. We call that an eye wall replacement cycle. And
Okay.
so I kind of like do research on that. Right now, I'm trying to use machine learning algorithms to um, pick up where they are using data. But yeah.
Interesting. So, can I ask you what your opinion is on climate change?
Yeah,
Being that
yeah.
you are
So
studying all of this and there's so many, people that believe in it and don't. And so I'm just curious, as someone from a data driven person.
So I don't unfortunately know like that much about it. Like I know what's on the news and I know what the scientists say, and I know it's definitely like a real thing. Although
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think a lot of people, especially at like my college, don't always agree with it,
Okay.
unfortunately. But I think it's one of those things like, yes, it's real, but like, what does that mean? Like, how are we going to stop it? And I
Hmm.
think, there's two extremes. There's like, hey, we don't need to do anything. It's fine. It'll sort itself out. And then there's the other extreme of like, we need to like revert back to like the dark age.
Yeah.
We all need to like stop using computers and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's
Which
like,
is not realistic. We have to
no,
be realistic too.
yeah, 100%. And I think that's the problem is, but people are just like on the extremes, and it's like, no, 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 we can find a happy medium. And
Yeah.
also, I think there's a lot we don't know about the planet. And even like the funny thing, although I'm probably wrong, for my current understanding of hurricanes, like even though they're getting more powerful, I mean, some of the physics says maybe they're going to get weaker too if the climate heats up. And so, because the hurricanes kind of form, at least from what I understand, is there's a difference between the atmospheric temperature and then the ocean temperature. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like an engine when you have like the two extremes
Hmm.
of temperature, and then it starts going. But it's just one of those things like we don't. I mean, we know what's going on, but we don't like 100% know what's going on. But it's still definitely a real thing. So
Well, that's why it's important to have people like yourself that are willing to study it and are interested and are going to help us get to a better conclusion. Because yeah,
yeah.
it is definitely a hot topic right now.
Oh yeah.
Being with LA and everything. So, have you always been someone like just as a young kid that was really interested in physics? Like, do you have family members that are into it? Like, how
Yeah.
did that come about?
Well, the funny thing is, like, I always sucked at math as a kid. Like, I was awful at it, and but in so Lake Braddock, for those who don't know, is a secondary school, which means it has the middle school and the high school. And one of the benefits of that is for them being attached
I didn't
is
realize that.
yeah. So it's
When I
good
lived in
for
Springfield, I realized it had both.
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
the nice part about having both is that it has a huge library.
Okay.
And I thought as a kid I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, and like go to space and like build rockets and all that cool stuff. And then I was reading all the astronomy and aerospace books in my library, and I'd finished them all. And in like late seventh grade, I think early eighth grade, I read a book by Isaac Asimov called The History of Physics. And
Okay.
I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is like awesome.
You
And
knew. You
I just
just
knew
knew.
I was going to do it. And I guess here I am at the Citadel doing it. So.
Wow. So let me ask you this as far as like studying physics, because obviously in high school, a lot of the courses aren't based around that subject. And then, so did you have to wait until you went to the Citadel to really like focus on it, or were there actual courses at
I was
school?
actually I'll admit, being from Fairfax County, but also being at Lake Braddock, I was very privileged in that we had all the physics courses.
Oh, okay.
So Lake Braddock is, I think, the only or one of the only schools in Fairfax County, and probably one of the only ones in the country where you can have AP Physics 1, AP Physics 2, and both of the AP Physics calculuses.
Wow.
And so I
Okay.
actually got to skip my first year of physics at the Citadel because of all the physics courses I took in high school.
That is really cool to know. I mean, Fairfax County, for those of you that don't know, is one of the top public school systems in the nation. I think it was number one at one point. I don't know if
Yeah,
is it still number one?
I think it's between them and Loudon.
I was going to
But
say Loudoun County, that's where I
you know,
lived before I moved back to San Diego. And I know that we were competitive with Fairfax, so we might have beat you out, huh?
yeah, I think it just, it's probably like, the emotions like, oh, I think maybe Fairfax's phone policy is better, or I think Loudon's like textbook policy.
Yeah,
I mean, by that, like at that high level, it's like nothing, with
yeah,
it. So it's actually one of the extremes, I think, coming down here to South Carolina was seeing that like crazy difference, like going from like the top to like
yeah,
seeing some of my high school, or not high school, but some of my college buddies who are like from the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and I'm like,
yeah.
whoa, the high schools are like different. Like,
Yeah, it makes a difference. I mean, I know that when I moved to Virginia, I thought that I was going to raise my kids in San Diego. I had this idea like I move to Virginia, I get married, and then I'll have my husband, well, now ex, like move to California. But we
mhm,
had the discussion, Mitchell, about how our kids would have to go to private school or we'd have to move to a more affluent area so that we could be able to get good public schools because San Diego doesn't have the best public school system, and I grew up going to private. I was very privileged in that way, but that was like a conversation. And when we stayed in Virginia and especially moved to Loudoun County, like that was a big thing for us. The fact that we could have such amazing education for our kids for free. Um, and like it does make a difference.
even like the culture. I mean, and I think it is. I listened to the other podcast previously, and I think we're all like pretty into school, I guess, for Gen Z, but like especially in Fairfax County, it was not like, hey, what am I going to do after college? Oh, am I going to finish my high school diploma or degree? It was like, what university am I going to? What grad school
Yeah.
do I think I want to go to? It was like thinking like multiple steps ahead of the time, ahead of time, as opposed to like, am I even going to go to college or not? Like that was a yes, you're going to college. What are
Yeah.
you
No,
doing?
you're right. And not only am I going to college, but like I have to go to like a top school. Like it's
Oh,
even
100%.
competitive with that. Like,
I had definitely had some anxiety about that as a high school student. A lot of my peers, they got into like Stanford, they got into Princeton, they got into Caltech. I mean, they got into like crazy schools that
yeah.
like, I could have only dreamed of getting into. I was not that good of a high school student, for context, but
Listen, I wasn't either. That somehow I ended up at UCLA.
And then I think after the fact, I mean, coming to the Citadel, it was one of those schools like I had never heard of this school before, and then
Oh,
now that I'm
okay.
here, and um, I think whether it's like the cyber club, I'm not a member of it, but I have a lot of friends who are, or just I think even like some of the physics stuff we do. I mean, you can really be at any institution and like punch above your weight. I mean, it doesn't matter. Sure, you go to Stanford, but like you could still be not that smart. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of people realize that, especially with the community college. Like, why go to some expensive 100K school if I'm just going to get, a marketing degree or something like that? Nothing wrong
Yeah.
with marketing, but just it's kind of the
Yeah.
same,
Well,
and
and
a
not
lot of
only
different benefits.
that, like, I mean, I can tell you hindsight. I mean, I'm 49 and I didn't actually graduate from UCLA because that's when I had gone through my depression and my failed
Mhm.
suicide attempt and I never completed it. And I was an art history major. So first art history major, which I didn't do anything with. And secondly, I didn't actually graduate and I never like lied about it. I was very honest. And I was able to get to where I got to with a lot of hard work and the people that I knew, the networking. So, like, I also realized that you can take a different path and get to the same place. It's just, maybe it took me longer because of it. Also, I got married and was a stay-at-home mom, so there's a lot of different circumstances. But, I try to tell a lot of, your generation that your idea of what your future might look like usually doesn't turn out the way that you think it's going to, for better or worse,
Yeah.
like
Oh no, that happened to me actually. So when I came to the Citadel, like junior year of high school, I mean, I guess I'll be a little open too. Like I had my mental health struggles, which I think is also surprising going to the Citadel.
yeah.
But so when I was 16, I had actually tried to kill myself. Yeah, and
Well, thank
I
you
just
for
had like,
sharing, first of
oh
all.
yeah, for sure. I had a pretty rough home life and all that, and I think I did the therapy for about a year. I kind of stopped doing all that stuff afterwards, which I know some people say like, oh, you can't really heal. I mean, I think for the most part I have, but all that to say, so after the fact, and then I was like, hey, I mean, I don't really know what I'm going to do with my life. I mean, I don't think I'll get into a good physics school, which was definitely not good self-thinking. But then I was
Yeah.
like, hey, maybe I could try the military. And then later I was like, hey, why don't I go to the Citadel and still do physics and try Navy ROTC? And then doing the Navy ROTC, I got a 3-year scholarship. So they would pay for the school outright. I'd go be an officer in the Navy, but then they, with the whole like mental health suicide thing,
Yeah.
they shot me down, and yeah, which was really disappointing. But I mean, I always think of things like like game of football, right? You got the 10 yard
Yeah.
line, and you got 4 downs. So I used my first down, but that's okay. I got
Yeah.
second down. So
Yeah, how do you I don't know how I feel about that, Mitchell, because you and I are both examples and testaments to the fact that we were able to get out of that place. And I mean, like I said, it was 30 plus years. It was, yeah, for me. And I have yet to go back to that place because I have skills and tools that I use to like allow myself to like at least feel something in the moment and then be able to get myself out of it and move forward. And it sounds like you have too. So there's something that I feel like to kind of keep that label on you because it was something that did happen. I mean, could it be because of your age and it is still kind of like so close to that time? Because I would think that if I was applying for something, they're like, oh, well, back in, college when you were 20, you attempted, to take your life. Like, because of that, we're not going to trust that you're good or qualified for something.
I think it's just the stigma of the Navy and the military in general.
Okay.
They just like they still like have a huge problem. I mean, even here at my university, I was sitting down at lunch one time, and the fun part about being at the Citadel is just everyone's like we're all the same age, we're all about the same, and so we're all really close and we were eating lunch, and a couple of my buddies were like, "Yeah, if you have a mental health problem, you shouldn't even be at the school because you have to submit a health package before
Yeah.
coming." And but the school cleared me because they were like, "Hey, you're chill." After the fact, they didn't know though that I had this had happened to me, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of one of those funny things. Like I was just sitting there, eating my rice or whatever, and it was like I wouldn't be your friend right now if that was the policy of the school, and so. It's like I'm glad the Citadel took a chance on me in a
Yeah.
sense.
Which is great because I think what happens too is like unless people know someone or like they're affected by it themselves, like it's hard for them to have any kind of like empathy or compassion for it. So the fact that like you were able to share it and I'm sure they were like, "Oh crap, like dude, we
Yeah,
love you. Like you're our brother." Like then hopefully that gave them at least a little bit of a different perspective on what it means to be someone that has experienced those things. So I feel like hopefully you helped, kind of get that conversation going in a way that it wasn't so like, oh my gosh, like
I hope so. I
we
mean,
can
that's
talk
something
about
I've
it.
been trying to do for the school. Like right now, I'm working with some of the administrators, and we're
Okay.
doing like a mental health triage first aid training. So for the Citadel, one of the cool parts about being a military school is we have like billets you can fulfill. And so
Okay.
like I'm in charge of helping my company with academics, so that's my billet. But one of the billets is human affairs, so mental health, making sure you're physically all right, and that sort of thing. And so I'm working with a group of people, and we're trying to empower them to have triage first aid kit. So if someone's in a mental health crisis, you're not just sitting there like calm down, like you're okay, like
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't know
Get
what to
over
do.
it.
Yeah, get over it. And it's like, hey, dude, like you're okay, you're safe, just
Yeah.
breathe, chillax. It's one of those just working people through it because a lot of people just don't know what to do. And I think that's just a big problem with the military in general is the stigma around it and people not knowing what to do.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, that's been something that's been happening for centuries. So it's like one of those things, it's not going to happen overnight, but to have little changes and to have people like yourself that can help them gain a different perspective, educate them. That's why I try to talk about it when I can. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be someone that's like in it all the time because it's a heavy subject, but I also realize that I should be able to talk about it because I didn't for
Yeah.
years. I kept it on the down low for decades. and then I finally shared it on my LinkedIn like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And then, if anything, it changed the trajectory of my life in a positive way because I was vulnerable. And knowing that, that's like helped me to try to have more conversations around it for sure. So I do appreciate you sharing that and being so open about it for sure.
Yeah, no, I think even it's like one of those things we talk about, like people do their cancer runs and they do their like, sorry, I hope that didn't sound sarcastic, but they do
No,
their
no,
like,
no.
they've like physical, or I think one of my friends, she had cerebral palsy, and there's events we'll do for that. And it's like, with like mental health, it's like, oh, whatever, like, shun that or just don't really
Yeah.
talk about it. And it's like, why not like, hey, I'm proud. Like, hey, I survived suicide, I guess. And it's like,
Yeah.
or, hey, it's one of those things like I got through, I tamed the
Yeah.
black dog in a sense.
Well, being proud that you were able to get on, get through that dark time
Yeah.
and thrive, it really is like about thriving at this point and then giving back because that's what you're doing. Like that's what I'm trying to do. I'm like, well, what can I do with this? Okay, I can give back by hopefully giving Gen Z a voice to be able to kind of feel seen and heard because that does
Mhm.
affect someone's mental health and how they feel
Oh,
about
100%.
themselves. And what you're doing is you're giving back too. And I think that's the key is like if we can learn from it and do better with it, then like it's an experience that I don't regret. It's part of my story, and
Yeah.
I'm here doing this because of it.
And that's actually why I had this whole debacle with the Navy in the first place was when I was filling out all the medical paperwork, a lot of people around me were like, hey, just lie about it. They're not going to know, which was kind of true.
Yeah.
And then I think I was like, no, I want to be honest about it because I want like my sailors around me to know like, hey, it's okay to feel these things and we're going to work through it together. Like it's not the end of the world. I'm Mitchell. This is a part of being Mitchell. It's like
Yeah.
you get the whole package or you don't get anything. So
Yeah, and I think it is going to take maybe like just kind of generations to go through the system and the process to get to a place where it wouldn't be having, someone say, "Hey, I don't need to put this on here. We can kind of keep it off." I feel like down the road it'll be like, "Okay, check. All right, you're fine. Like good. Like it's
yeah.
not like a discussion to be had." So I want to like at least acknowledge that this is once again like a system that has been doing the same thing for decades because I think we can be so quick to judge everything and start bashing certain systems and certain just governments, all of that. Like I feel like we
Yeah,
also
for
have to
sure, for
kind of
sure.
have like more understanding of the
Mhm.
reality that this is something like our parents, our parents were brought up a certain way, so they parented us because of the
Yeah.
effects of the way they were parented. Same thing with my kids. Like it's
Mhm.
trying to break the cycle, but once again, it's having these conversations so that we can break the cycle and do better. But these are hard conversations to have, Mitchell. I'm not lying. Like as I'm sitting here
Oh yeah.
talking to you, I'm in my head like thinking, oh my gosh, are we gonna like ruffle feathers? Are we gonna like, but at the same time, I'm like, no, these are the uncomfortable conversations that have to be had.
Mhm. Yeah, and although if any of my buddies from the Citadel listen, they'll probably make fun of me later. But one of our administrators, he's like in charge of all the military stuff. He always
Yeah.
tells us this quote. Sometimes he says it too much, but I really think it's true. It's do right and fear no man. And it's one of those things like when you really start to like embrace it, it's like, hey, let's just like do the right thing. And like if you say something negative, like
Yeah.
screw you. Like like who cares? Like
But it is tough, right
it is
now,
tough. Oh
especially
my
with
God, for sure.
I mean, I've had this conversation with people that I know. They're like, be careful because, these are, a generation that everything's online and everything's out there. Once it's out there, it's out there and people
Yeah.
can see it and dig it up. And it's like, but I also told them, I'm like, I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to live in fear of what someone might say because they heard one of my guests say something in
Mhm.
particular, or I said something. I'm like, that's not a way to live either. So it's like that like place of do I live in fear or do I just go ahead and like you said not care and just go for it because it's coming from a good place, like
Yeah,
all
and
of this is coming from a good place.
I think that fear of like others is the biggest thing. And actually, I was listening to all your other podcasts, and I wanted to say this: if I had the chance, and I think I do now, I think the fear of others is the biggest thing that shackles my generation.
Mm,
And the reason I say that is one, I think with this, if I wasn't open with my friends about it, if my buddies and I, we call ourselves my like little tiny group of friends, we call ourselves mighty men after David, who is a character in the Bible. Um,
Okay.
he had a group of, they called themselves David's mighty men. And it's one of those things like we're always open with each other. Like, hey, dude, I'm really struggling with this right now.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm really like, this is like a big thing I need help with. Like, can you help me through it? And I think there's just a fear among our generation of, I don't know if it's like others making fun of us or like, being afraid of the collective. Because even one example is we'll have like giant student-wide like meetings where it'll be like all 2,000 of us in the same room. And there's a lot of times where they'll ask us like, hey, who has questions? And we'll just sit there in silence. And it's like, come on, like someone has to have a question right now.
Yeah.
Like, are you so scared? Like you can't ask a question in front of 2,000 people, which is scary. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but like I feel like people are too paralyzed by fear in this generation. I think there's just maybe too much anxiety.
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And it is hard to like navigate a lot of that because, there are people unfortunately that don't have like support groups or they don't have people they can turn to and be like, listen, I'm not feeling so well, like, or hey, I need your advice, or hey, can you just like listen to me? And that's the thing too, is that that support system. So the fact that you have a little brotherhood there that you guys are willing to talk and to share things, like that is huge. Like that right there, I hope that folks, especially young men around your age, acknowledge how important that is.
Not going to go through the text right now, but like we shared at least 5 things this morning, all of us. But some of it was victories, which is really
Yeah,
always fun to share, and then some of it
that
was
is
like,
just as important, Mitchell, is
yeah,
to be able to share your
100%.
victories and be proud of them for sure.
And then some of it was like, dude, I'm really struggling with this right now, and it's just like one of those things. Like I'm so pumped just to have this group of guys, and it's even some of
Yeah.
the people in my like squad, I guess, from years past. Even though we don't keep up that much anymore, it's one of those like I'll go see them every once in a while, and it's like I just feel like we're still like such best friends. Like I've developed such a unity with them. It's gonna be hard to break.
Yeah. And that's really important because I think a lot with your generation, because of social media and the internet, everybody thinks that you guys are lacking that social interaction and that human connection. But I feel like from what I'm finding, talking to a lot of you, you guys really still do a good job of having like your core group of friends and making sure that you guys are there for each other physically, like in person. And so I think that's also kind of another narrative around your generation that I'm not really seeing. I mean, I am seeing, obviously, there's still a disconnect and some loneliness, but I feel like you guys are doing a pretty good job of trying to have that group of support around you.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was. There's a website called the Eon. It's like AEON. It's like the Atlantic, but it's less biased and it's free. So
Okay.
as a college student, I like less biased and I like
Okay. I'm gonna
free.
have to put, yeah.
Yeah, you got to look it up. It's great. And one of the things is they always write a lot of psychology articles, a lot of philosophical
Oh, I love that.
articles, and
Okay,
some
cool.
science. Yeah, it's really great. And they're talking about like the epidemic of loneliness, and I think it's true. And but I mean, it's weird because like I don't really see it. I mean, at least for my group of friends.
Um, well, I love this because like, we were talking about physics. We were talking about what you wanted to do, hurricanes. And then we got to like open up a little bit about, mental health. And I love how just vulnerable and just honest you have been. And I think that's really going to help a lot of people listening to this, especially young men your age. And I think that is so important. And I absolutely like am so excited that like the conversation just came about very organically. Because yeah, when I have these podcast episodes, I don't know where the conversation's going to go
Yeah, for
on
sure.
purpose.
Yeah, no, I'm
So,
glad.
yeah.
That was super organic. That was definitely no, that was a great lead in, and I'm glad just to be open about it because I think the more we're open, the more it's like, oh well, like it's totally normal to struggle with that, and I think
Yeah.
even there's no shame, like you break down the shame because that's
Yeah.
I think insecurity and the shame is really what takes you away, and so
Oh, absolutely. And then once you're able to take that away, there's this sense of like liberation and empowerment too that comes along with it that feels really good. And then when you know how good you feel, you want others to feel the same way, knowing that you're like, oh, if you can like kind of let go of that shame and let go of that fear, like you're going to get into this place of feeling
Mhm.
just great. And I would want you to be in that place. So I think
Yeah,
that's
100%.
kind of like where we're coming from too, right? Like when you're on the other side, it's like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want to
no,
bring
like
people with you.
100%. Yeah, no, that's what I'm always telling my buddies. Come on, guys, like, don't like, wallow in this. Like,
Yeah.
but I also have to be patient too. So
Yeah, no, patience is key for sure. It is a
yeah,
virtue. Like
yeah,
there is a
100%.
reason why they say that. Um, well, I really appreciate it, Mitchell. Is there anything like any parting words before we end this?
No, I mean, I definitely could have gone on for a while about physics. I brought one of my physics textbooks because I plan on studying right after this.
Oh, okay. Well, I can always have you on and we can talk specifically about physics because I love that. Like, that's another part of me that people don't really know is that I just geek out on all that stuff and I love it. So I could listen to it all day.
Yeah, no, it is an amazing thing, and I think it's one of those things too. People like don't know necessarily where to get it, and I think it's like, why not just talk to a physics person? Like, yeah, sure, it may be hard to understand at first because we're excited to talk about it, but
Yeah.
all of us like have some sort of niche we're really into, and even at the undergrad level, I think we all really like something, even though as an undergrad I may not be that smart. It's just one of those things like just ask us questions. We'd love to like get into it because the
Yeah.
media has like a lot of weird, stupid things. And, just ignore them.
That good old media.
Yeah,
I know that's the thing is like, yeah, if you can talk to someone who's actually in it and studying it and then, can explain it, then I think that's like the best resource. So yeah, for anybody that is listening, you gotta like connect with Mitchell because I definitely like have questions and I'll have to have you back on. I'll have to like come up with really good ones. I'm
yeah, for
gonna
sure. Or
go.
even like machine learning. I'm not that good at it, but I'm starting to really get into it, and it's so much fun. So
Ooh, machine learning. That's a whole nother thing too. Yeah, we'll
yeah,
have to have you back on for sure. I love it. All right. Well, thanks,
If you
Mitchell.
enjoyed this episode
yeah.
and you're
Thank
between
you.
the ages of 18 and 24 and would like to be a featured guest, go to rock.vision. Until next week.